hopefully. And we're live, maybe we're not doing the video. Let's see.
Hello and welcome to Office Hours with David Meltzer. I'm a co-host, Blaine Bartlett, and David is in the traveling studio today. So he's going to be kind of weaving in and out as we do this. And David, just real
Yes,
quick
sir.
before I introduce Brendan here, where are you headed right now? I know where you're headed, but just let everybody know.
Yeah. So we're here at the Grounded Men Retreat, and we have a VIP dinner in honor of Unstoppable Foundation. We have Dr. Joe Dispenza. We have Chicharito, the world famous premier soccer player, Dr. Kian Vu, Dr. Pascal. We have myself and many other people here to support the Unstoppable Foundation in Santa Barbara. And we're going to have a very interesting mastermind dinner with all of us answering questions and pouring into the community in support of Unstoppable, which Blaine and I are on the board of, and Cynthia Kersey is the founder, and she'll be here as well to help us get and garner the support that we need. Thanks, Blaine, for giving us an opportunity to promote the Grounded Men Retreat, and thank you, Brendan, for your patience for Mobile Meltzer here in the Sprinter Van studio live. Oh, we're right by Neverland Ranch. We're a ranch here, so it's very beautiful, but I'm ready to get going with Office Hours. Thanks, Blaine.
There you go. Good. Brendan, welcome. Hey, folks, you all have heard, without a doubt, about FUD Factor, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And Brendan has got this fascinating book just coming out. First of all, he's the CEO and president of Merchants Fleet, and we're going to talk about that a little bit too. But the idea behind the book, his newest book, The FUD Factor, Overcoming Fear, Uncertainty, and Doubt in Order to Achieve the Impossible. Now, that last piece is the piece that I think is the real grab. Because, and most people think of, overcoming FUD just to kind of get by. Let me get over the hump. So this is a completely different aspirational focus here. So before we go into what you've got going with Merchants Fleet, why don't we just talk a little bit about the book?
Yeah, hey, Blaine, it's real interesting. It's I don't think we realize how much fear, uncertainty, and doubt we have. So if you think when we're all born, we're truly born fearless, and as kids we just kind of go out and do stuff, and all of a sudden it's parents, it's family, it's guardians, it's loved ones, it's society that says, Hey, put that seatbelt on. Hey, you're going skateboarding, put a helmet on. But when you tell like a little kid, hey, put a helmet on so you don't fall, in the kid's mind, they didn't even know that falling was an option. They had no fear. It was like, I'm gonna be on skateboard. What do you mean fall? So it's we unintentionally imprint ourselves with fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Hey, I'm gonna go to prom. I want to ask this girl out. What if she says no? And we start to get this uncertainty. We're thinking in high school, trying out for a team or a soccer team or an elite travel team, and someone goes, hey, they only select a few people. You may not make it. But the kid who was trying out was like, what do you mean? I'm going to make it. So, we get this, and then that just builds up over time. And what it winds up happening is it stops us from trying to achieve oftentimes great things, because when we say, hey, we want to do something great, we want to travel in a Sprinter, across Santa Barbara and go do something great and be a VIP at a dinner. And someone goes, oh, but I'm not a VIP. Yeah. Well, like, why? Why do you say that? Because over time you started to believe these little seeds of uncertainty and doubt or fear. And then once it's like a snowball, once you start to have that, it grows within you. And here's the thing. Oftentimes it grows unconsciously. People don't even realize that they're holding themselves back.
Yeah. And go ahead, Dave.
Yeah. Sorry, Brendan, I have a saying, we'll never overachieve our own self-image, and incorporated in that self-image is our relationship, not only with fear, but the emotional address that we give that fear. And when you talked about all those scenarios, but what if, they all are indicative of the emotional address of fear placed on an outcome of success or failure instead of on experience and journey. And so, within the perspective, how do we get people to enjoy the journey and not necessarily worry about the outcome?
Yeah, so it's interesting when you say enjoy the journey. I'm at this particular company now coming on 6 years, and I end every email, every virtual hangout, every town hall with enjoy the journey. And that and I think when you enjoy the journey, as you just said, and you're part of the journey, and you're conscious in your own journey, you actually get to see all the little things that are possible, and little things every day. 1% habits, good habits, really turn into something that's extraordinary. And no one has ever said, "Hey, I'm going to go achieve something extraordinary," without 100 little steps getting them there. Whether that's an athlete making it to a college level or a pro level, or a celebrity or a business person getting to become a director because that's what they really wanted to achieve, or someone being the first to finish college in their family. Well, it's not just, "Hey, I just finished college." It's, I did well in high school. I found a school. I applied for financial aid. I took the SAT, and I did one step in front of the other. And too many times, like, we see the big picture, but we don't enjoy the journey along the way. But what I will say to you and your audience is, I think some of the most fascinating, most enjoyable parts of the journey are the struggles. That's where we grow as people.
That's an interesting comment, I think, Brendan, because most people don't understand the purpose of a goal. Most people think that a goal is to achieve something. And yeah, that does happen. But if you're setting the right kind of goals, the purpose of a goal is actually to grow. And you're not going to grow by remaining comfortable. You're not going to grow by doing what you know how to do. You got to step out on that edge, and you got to step out there, and you got to do some things that are very, very, at the time, risky. You have done some, actually truly amazing things in your career here. I mean, right now you're the CEO of the fastest growing fleet technology company in North America. But you've also been named the world's most innovative CEO by CE World Awards. You've done, Fast Company 10 most innovative companies. I mean, you've got a lot of things that, from a cred perspective, it's kind of like, whoa, yeah.
Yeah. So what's real interesting is, it's like, when I think of innovativeness, and I think of some of the things the company I'm at, we're a 60-year-old company, and and I used to be the company's biggest client back in 2009. That's how I knew him, and then I joined the board. And then here's the lesson: if you speak up at a board meeting enough with good ideas, eventually they say, "You think you're so smart? Why don't you run the place?" Yep. So, I joined a little over 5 years ago. We were about 500 million. Last year we hit the 2.5 billion mark. So, we really had rapid growth. We wound up selling to Bain Capital, and everyone said, "Oh, what an innovative company." And we were. But if I walked you through all the innovations, you'd say, "Is that really wildly innovative? Or were you just willing to do things that," I'll use your word, Blaine, "that were uncomfortable and that made you a great company?" So commercial fleet, not the sexiest business, but here's what I'll tell you. So right now, David, you're driving down the road. 1 out of 5 vehicles on the road when you're going is a fleet vehicle. You think of Amazon, UPS, FedEx, Postal Service. Those are the obvious ones. But, Joe's HVAC and Sally's painting, those are also fleet vehicles, and that's what we do. But I took a company that was okay growing 2 to 3% a year, staying in their lane, if you will, not trying anything unique and different, and said, "Let's go try to be innovative. Let's go try to be different. Let's go try some things." And on my first day, I met with the whole leadership team, 3 people that really ran the P&L of the business, and said, "I want you each in the next 6 months to start 2 businesses, and it's okay that one fails, and I expect one to fail." And you think that's an easy concept? Now, after 3 months, none of them had started a business. They were all so focused on, it has to be right. It has to make money from day one. I remember telling them, I never said you needed to make money in the first 6 months. What I said is start a business. And so it's been a great journey, But the things we've done, as innovative as they appear to be, they're really not. We're just willing to fail. We're willing to try new things. And if I lined up all the new things, you would literally say, that's not rocket science. That's not amazing. It's pretty simple stuff.
Brendan, one of the things that's so interesting, and working for bigger companies like you have, is the cover your ass culture. And it's very rare, even though and I know that it's an evolutionary process of someone who's willing to fail and fail fast and learn from it. And now they call you a genius and an innovator. The real challenge was to believe in what you believe in, not what was missing, not was, wasn't there, not what they thought. Because I see the biggest limitation in bigger companies, especially, is the fear of losing their job or fear of being exposed for taking a chance. And I found that most boards and most leadership of big companies, they want risk takers like you. And how do we get that communication to the directors and managers? Hey, don't cover your ass, but be able to defend your choices by what you've learned. And I just am so puzzled that many leaders can't do that.
Well, first of all, what I'll say in my career is I look at the things that have failed, the attempts we've made. I've learned way more in the failures when you kind of dissect them. Why did this fail? Why didn't it work? Than some of the successes. A couple of the things we did or that I really push people to do is, do training company wide. And because first thing, when you try to be innovative, a lot of people say I'm not creative, and I'm like, we didn't say be creative. I said be innovative. Yeah. Be innovative could be, hey, we have a form that everyone has to fill out, and 5 of these fields don't make any sense, and it takes a half hour to fill out. Why don't we just simplify it? That's not being creative. That's just being productive. So do some training that really unleashes everyone to be a part of it. But the biggest thing that I can say that has made it cultural in companies is we celebrate our failures and we talk about them. Mm-hmm. So I remember we said we're going to go into there's all these franchises. So if you think of franchises, and they have cargo vans running all over the place doing different things. We said we're going to enter that business, and we do larger fleets. We enter the business, we hire people, and after a year we say this is a real kick in the ass. This is hard because instead of doing like a big 2,000 unit fleet, we're doing all these small fleets of 2, and we weren't set up to service like that. So we shut it down. But like we in our monthly huddles on virtual hangouts with the company, we talked about it. We said, here's why we went into it. Here's why it's not working. It's putting too much stress on our operations, and we're shutting it down, and we're taking care of, the clients. We're making sure that we're not just pushing them off. And we kind of had a toast, and we talked about it. And we have a little chat room during these. The chat room just lit up with, great comments, but also surprising comments of why are we celebrating a failure? And what I loved is employees were answering that. Employees were saying, hey, because we tried. And I think that's the lesson in it is if you don't try, you're not going to do anything great. Yeah. You're just not going to do anything great. You're going to do something good. You're going to be average or above average, but you're never going to be great if you're not trying to be great.
Akio, not Akio Narita, Sorichiro Honda. I just spent a week in Japan doing some trainings, leadership development work, and one of the programs I was working on is a new one that we're bringing online here, The Secrets of Sustainable Success, and that notion of just kind of how do you keep yourself moving. But Sorichiro Honda was asked one time, what's the secret to your success? And he said, I made as many mistakes as I could as fast as I could. Yeah. And he celebrated that in the Honda company in that whole ecosphere. That was something that they absolutely celebrated. The question of moving into that unknown territory, Brendan, and it's incremental steps. And I was really struck by 6 months they hadn't started any new businesses. They were still at the starting line. Let me just check this out. And this is a question just based on your experience. I've got an observation around this, but I'd like to kind of vet it. Yeah. What hangs people up is they get fixated on how do I do this? How do I do this? And the ones that I've looked at, the companies that I've looked at, and the leaders that I've actually been around in the last 40 years, they aren't too concerned with how I do it. They're more concerned with looking for who can help me do this. And that focus on the who rather than the how is the transformative nexus. Is that been your experience?
It is, because if you focus on the how, like, you don't know how. You're going to try something you haven't done.
Right.
Like, and you can't grab a playbook off the shelf that says, oh, here's how I do something I've never done. That doesn't exist. And interesting, you used the term there, fixated, I think, or fixed. We have a term in the company we use, and a consultant had used it in a meeting, and it stuck with us, fixedness. We have fixedness as people, and, oh, this is how you do it. Why? This is how I've always done it. And by the way, some fixedness is really good. If we didn't have some fixedness, we wouldn't know how to tie our shoe in the morning, right? Because that's just, learning. So some fixedness, but when you have fixedness around solving clients' problems, when you have fixedness about how to grow a company, it actually works against you. And you talked about the who. It's, get the right people and let them go. One little anecdote that we said we're going to start a truck rental business, and the team was coming up with, how many do we order? Where do we order them? How do we do this? Who do we pursue? And after 6 months, they came in and they said, we're really thinking of ordering 50 trucks and starting this business. I said, well, hey, good news. I ordered 500 yesterday. They're here in 90 days, and you've got 90 days to get them on a lease. And that was the catalyst that got them to go. But left to their own, they were probably going to keep studying it because they didn't want to fail. So all of a sudden now it was like, hey, well, the boss says 500. We just got to go get these deployed. We did.
Yeah.
We did. But it was, sometimes people just need a little push, push.
So, and speaking of push, we're going to push you off the stage right now. I've got somebody else that we're going to bring in, but we want to connect with you again. I would love to have you on my show. I know David has got a couple of shows, that we both have that we'd love to have you featured on as well. Folks, you can find out more about what he's up to by going to, let me see here, Brendan P. Keegan with two E's, BrendanPKeegan.com. And I'm assuming you can get a copy of the book and everything else.
Yep, absolutely. All right. Well, Blaine, thank you. It's nice spending time with you. David, drive safe. Thanks so much for what you guys do.
Thank
it's
you.
Important stuff. All right.
Thanks,
thank
buddy.
you.
Yeah.
Take care.
Great visionary. Who's up next, Blaine?
Well, we're moving the roster around a little bit here, but Waqas Al-Siddiq.
Hi, guys.
Hey, how you doing?
Not too bad. How are you guys doing?
We are doing amazingly well. Yeah, it's Office Hours Thursday. It's the Soul of Business Office Hours version, and we cannot wait to find out what you're up to here at BioCity.
Yeah, so at BioCity, we are one of the largest cardiac networks in the country. So we focus on high-risk patients and basically monitoring them actively and delivering those results in real time to physicians and cardiologists so that they can deal with real-time diagnostics, as opposed to giving patient a device and kind of sending them home and then waiting 2-3 weeks before you get the results back because it's got to be downloaded, analyzed, and then returned. So in our world, everything is instantaneous. We use smart analytics. So 3 o'clock in the morning, if we detect something, we can actually alert the physician and actually take action.
Yeah. Is there implantation involved with this? I mean, how does that sensor structure work with you?
Great question. So our whole focus is non-invasive monitoring, right? So we felt
that
the future
right there.
was—
I love that right there.
Exactly. We felt the future was non-invasive monitoring, people kind of collecting data, because most of healthcare happens when you're on the go. And so the idea was, let's build the technology and let's build a platform that can collect metrics non-invasively. You're going about your life, that whole wearable concept, but not for lifestyle, but for clinical reasons. And so it's external devices given to a patient. They get to wear it. They wear it 24/7, and then they bring it back to the doctor's office. And in between that time frame, if anything is detected, we alert the physician so that we can take action.
And the data side is going to be more and more important as we go, and especially when we're talking about the heart. And there's many lobbyists today that are facilitating the ownership of our own data because of the wearables and the mass distribution of information. Are you guys on your roadmap or pipeline looking at the data play behind the actual medical care that's given in supervision? Is there a data play in the business as well?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a huge data play. So we've got about 300 billion heartbeats tracked. So a massive amount of information. Now, we utilize that primarily to help improve algorithms, but really what we see that the number one killer in the world, and this is like every country in the world, is heart issues. And we sort of don't focus on it simply because heart issues are intermittent. They're very complicated to predict. They're very complicated to detect. And because most of the long-term monitors, they're only really available in the clinical setting. And so from our perspective, the data play for us is how can we understand and use this information that we're collecting clinically to give us kind of indicators on determining which patients could be at risk and how do we get them in earlier and how do we get them much earlier before they even get diagnosed.
With that amount of data being collected, I mean, that's a staggering number of heartbeats that you're referencing here. But yeah, from an algorithmic perspective, are you able to actually take that data and enable a predictive diagnostic play with the docs that are actually facilitating the patient's care? It's kind of like, we've got these indices. Look out for this.
Yeah, so we do a few different things, right? So, one, we're working with the NIH right now to look at predictive monitoring in kidney patients. So that's specifically looking at how we can look at heart issues within kidney patients, because that's the number one killer in kidney patients. But to your point, what we do is we have these thresholds. Essentially, most patients don't have a sudden condition. It deteriorates over time. Mm-hmm. We let the physician know very early on, saying, hey, you need to start paying attention because this patient has something. Now, that will move into the world of prediction, but of course, we're a clinical device, so FDA has very strict requirements on what we can say. But what we certainly do is, as we see this pathway deteriorating, we notify the physicians. And, to give you an idea of how complex cardiac issues are, I mean, you saw what happened with Damar Hamlin. You saw what happened with Bronny James. I mean, these guys are athletes. They are screened all the time by GP. They collect their heart data all of the time. So how was it missed? And it's because it's intermittent. And the number one killer in, athletes is actually heart issues. And so that's where we've looked at, okay, how do we take all of this information that we've collected, identify a risk profile, notify the physician early, and then they can actually move into that, capture those issues earlier. So we're essentially moving towards prediction, and we can do it technically speaking from a data perspective and a data modeling perspective, but FDA has their guidelines. And I think in the next 3 to 5 years, they're going to allow people to say more and do more. And until then, our approach is, hey, doc, pay attention.
That's great. David, you got a question there?
Yeah, I do. So, obviously the heart is the indicator whether we're alive or not. Your brain can stop, your ears can stop, your legs can fall off. And relative to that data into the analysis and tracking of the heart, have you been able already to find different variables that may have not been known before of what causes a heart attack or what causes heart disease?
Yeah, so we've been able to look at a lot of precursor information. So we're looking and seeing how things are deteriorating over time. So we've been able to look at things like, when you talk about certain changes in how your heartbeat is operating, right? So that everybody has these random blips that occur, and it's just normal in your ECG. But then once you start having more and more of those occurrences, and once they stack together, then you're really going into heart attack or heart block or something very, very catastrophic. But the precursor of that is seeing 1 or 2 of these beats show up, and then you see them getting closer and closer together. And then when you see 3 or 4 in a row, now that's when you're in trouble. And so that's what we've been able to see, is that there's these changes. Now, what we have not seen is that monitoring today is typically done maximum 30 days. So we actually introduced a new product won Time Magazine's award last year for the best invention in the world. It is the first continuous heart monitor that exists. And that device, as we roll that out and as more people use it, it's going to give the answer to that question that you just had, right? What is actually causing, and I can give you a personal story. I'm a big coffee drinker. I'm a coffee aficionado. And everybody tells me don't drink coffee before going to bed, but it doesn't affect me. I can go to sleep. But I started wearing this continuous heart monitor and I realized my heartbeat was, 5 to 7 beats higher while sleeping. So I was actually not getting as good of a rest because I was drinking coffee, but it wasn't affecting my ability to go to sleep. It was affecting the quality of my sleep. And I wouldn't have known that if I didn't have a continuous heart monitor. And I think this is exactly where, to your question, how in these athletes and these people who are looking pretty healthy, how can we predict it? And really what we need is a long-term monitor that's not limited to 30 days, but you can wear for months and years.
That's interesting. So just a form factor on this, because I have, as part of an annual physical and all that kind of stuff, I would wear a monitor and then, it would, not 30 days, but it'd be 2 weeks and it's bulky. It's just, It's an aggravation. If you're wearing this thing for as long as you said that you were wearing it, how have you designed it from a form factor perspective so that you not only can contain the electronics and the computer hardware necessary to make this happen, but also to make it comfortable enough that people will want to wear it?
Yeah. So on the lifestyle product that we built, so we have the medical device, which is what a cardiologist will use, and they're going to determine your surgery. So in that case, we've made it incredibly small. It's probably about 1.5 inches wide, and it's got 3 contact points that you have to stick to your skin. But of course, that's clinical setting, and you don't want to wear that on a long-term basis. But to your point, long-term, that's exactly the problem. How do you get it comfortable? And so what we built was this product called BioHeart. And what it is it's still a 1.5 inch form factor, very thin, but it's a strap that you can wear, kind of like a belt or a heart rate strap. But instead of collecting heart rate, it's actually collecting, clinical quality heart rhythm data. And you can sleep with that, exercise with that, live your life with that. I'm wearing one now, and I wear it all the time. And that one you can wear for months because there's no sticky to it. It's dry. It's just like a band. And you forget about it.
That is brilliant. I love where technology takes us. This is outstanding. Biotricity.com is the website, folks. Give yourself a gift and go check it out. Because this is fascinating technology. It truly is. And one of the things I like about this is, just in the conversation here, what I'm hearing is that you're not so much interested in market share as much as you are with market care, and that move to market care, really taking care of people from a form factor all the way through the outcome that is getting generated. That's brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
No, that's exactly right, and we founded the company because we saw that. Technology was just not democratizing cardiac care. It's that how do we democratize cardiac access? And like you said, you get that annual physical every 2 weeks, but why is that technology not available to everybody? And so we solved it for the cardiologist and made it, improve the care and the quality for the individuals while they're getting the annual physical. But then we also made it accessible for personal use. And that's exactly right.
That's beautiful. Again, you can find out more at biotricity.com. Waqis Al-Siddiq, he's the founder, chairman, and CEO. And I love what you're up to. David, any final words to...
No, I'm just blown away. Some of the things that we dreamed about, Blaine, when we were younger. Literally ubiquitous health system that is now shared, not only for the care, but also for the acceleration of the care. And what we can gather today is worth as much as the lives that we're saving. So thanks so much. I will make sure that we follow up even with more connectivity as technology is keeping us at 65 miles an hour together today. So thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Waqis, thank you very much for being a guest. We'll talk to you later.
Thank you for having me.
You bet. And David, we got a little bit of time here. Adam, our next guest, has not gotten into the studio yet, but we'll just keep the line open here, and Raluca will let me know when we're good to go. And David, you appear to be frozen, so maybe I should just do a little monologue. I'm not sure. Oh, there he is. Okay. Okay. We're going to bring Adam in now. Okay. Perfect. Great. And David's back with us too. So, Adam, welcome, CEO of Almanac.
Great.
Almanac.io.
Thanks for having me.
David's on the road right now, so I'm kind of shepherding the show a little bit today. And he's in a spot right now where connectivity is a little bit of a challenge. So, talk to us real quick here. The modern work method, derived from over 5,000 interviews with top business professionals. What are you thinking about here? What is this modern work method that Almanac.io is actually promulgating here, that you're really championing?
Sure. I mean, I think what we're trying to do with the modern work method is answer a question about how we should all be working in the new normal in which we all now live. I just saw data today on return to office stats. And, even though you hear a lot of news about bank CEOs and Elon Musk saying, hey, it's time to return to the office, just using cell phone data, San Francisco's downtown is still below 40%. Even New York is below 65%. Major downtowns from Miami to Chicago haven't recovered. And now more than a year and a half after the COVID restrictions ended, people are still working in a fully remote or in a hybrid fashion. They're certainly not going back to the office. And, even before COVID, it wasn't as if we were working super well together in an office. But now that teams are spread across time zones and even continents, there's a lot of pain that people are feeling around how to just get stuff done quickly on the internet. And some teams were working this way even before COVID. And there's a strong correlation between the highest performing companies like Stripe or Amazon or Apple or Netflix and teams that have thought really intentionally about how they work. And so what we tried to do with the modern work method was talk to those teams. And as you mentioned, we've talked to over 5,000 professionals at this point across 4 years, thousands of companies that we've surveyed and done first person interviews with to try and understand what is it about how you're working that's working so well? How did you figure it out? How do you teach it to others? And we've aggregated all those insights and synthesized them into a couple of key principles, along with hundreds of templates that are free that teams can use to try and take some of those ideas from high-performing companies into their own working environments.
I'm fascinated by this because, I've been in business for 40 plus years, and I've worked with some of the largest companies as well as startups. And the work process piece is an interesting conundrum, I guess I would call it, because people get attached to certain ways of doing things that are not necessarily beneficial to what it is that we'd like to have as an outcome on the backside. And one of the goals of Almanac is to reduce a lot of that stuff by about 80%, as I understand it. What are you running into in terms of people's resistance and or reluctance to let go of what was as they kind of come into focus, or bring into focus what could be?
It's a great question. I think the transition we're in right now will take multiple decades because I think there's a whole generation of managers that learned that success meant that they had a team that had their butts in seats from 9 to 5, and that the way they were supposed to manage is by making sure that people were in the office and attending meetings and responding to messages, and that participation was equal to moving the needle or to making an impact, which I don't think it actually is. But there's a whole group of people who believe that that's the right way to manage. And I think it will take, to be honest, them retiring and to have a new set of managers come in with a different set of ideas around what success looks like for themselves, for their team, for things to really shift. The model that I would call like office culture is based on is can be derived back to the World War II factory production system, where there was an assembly line, as I'm sure we all have seen, and there were widgets moving down the line, and people on the line were responsible for their step in the process, maybe a little bit what was happening right above and below them, but no one really needed to think about like the broader system, and managers literally sat above the floor and were supervising it. And, even as work moved from being mostly blue collar to more white collar environments with much more creative tasks, in professional services or in finance or in arts or entertainment, we still kind of kept that model as if we were all producing widgets. And so that hasn't been relevant for a long time. And the top performing companies, I think, abandoned it a while ago. But now we have this additional forcing function where even though there's a class of managers who are brought up to manage by proximity, what happens when those managers can't actually see their team members all day long, and where too many meetings actually leads to burnout or inefficiency. And so I think that's where the rub is right now, where it wasn't as if you had like huge groups of people who were just burning out before COVID, but the remote or distributed context in which we're now working, I think is causing like a lot of shock to the system. And so I think it will take a while, because there will be, a transition, kind of a cultural transition that happens at work as, you see Gen Z, people who are natively entering the workforce. And a couple of years ago, everyone was like, oh, how will they manage? How will they get mentorship and friendships? And they're doing just fine. I think they're doing probably better than any previous generation. They're drinking less, and they're mentally much healthier than my generation, millennials. So everyone's doing fine. I think so it will take time for kind of that culture to transition. I think there's also huge parts of our economy that are tied into the old way of working. The commercial real estate industry is going to go through a major restructuring. Public transportation systems. I live in San Francisco. A huge percentage of our city's revenue base is based on like corporate taxes. Like that's not going to be there. And so I think it's going to take time for us to kind of restructure how we all work and live. To give you a more personal example, I go to a gym now during the daytime at 12 p.m. And the gym I go to, used to have huge peaks early in the morning and after work. And now they actually have much more balance throughout the day. So some businesses are thriving, like small businesses, cafes, restaurants, parks, gyms, and communities. So it's not that there's only been losers in this transition. There's been major winners too. But yeah, I think there's some people who may have more trouble shifting, whereas people who are growing up natively in this environment, it's the only way they've ever worked and lived. And I think it'll take time.
I think so. Yeah. David, welcome back.
And thank you. I got a call from Cynthia Kersey, so it kicked me out. So it's hilarious. Anyways, what's so interesting to me is I think there's a great gap in productivity and awareness of the power of productivity, meaning that our businesses, our industries have not caught up to the power of productivity from the Gen Z people, from our younger employees. They can do sometimes without the knowledge of the directors, executives, and board members. They have no capability of understanding how productive these people can be. And so we've actually lowered the bar in the hybrid and remote settings of productivity, because a lot of employees can get by not only with doing 1/10 the amount of time that they used to do and what their predecessors would do, but they can actually capture 3 or 4 jobs because of the lack of knowledge of productivity. How do you see this gap being closed, where as a whole the industry starts realizing, oh my gosh, we are expecting so very little out of our employees, we really can benefit by an acknowledgement of productivity?
Yeah, I think we're seeing this shift from like a command and control power and information structure that typifies office culture to more of a direct A to B workflow that typifies online culture. If you think about like Google, right? If we have a question, we don't go, talk to the map person first and they go talk to their other map person. We just go to Google Maps and find the information we're looking for. I think that's the power of the internet, is that it's, essentially a network where you can just draw a straight line from your question to an answer, from a input to an output. And I think that's how modern teams often work as well. If you need something, you go directly to the person who has it, or you find the answer yourself. And so, I think people who grew up natively and on the internet just know how to do that, because that's the only way they've ever existed. I think the question is, what's the role for managers, or what does it mean to be productive in an online world? And I think when we talk to teams, we've heard three things come up really consistently, like almost 80-90% of the time. The first is counterintuitively more structure. I think there's this general idea that like modern work means just get a bunch of smart people in the room and let them do what they want. And what we've heard from great managers, even in high performing distributed teams, is that structure actually enables speed. If you tell people what success looks like at the start of the project, you make roles clear, you talk about how work's going to get done, the actual work happens much more smoothly, and that means it happens much more quickly because everybody can make better decisions on their own. People know what the handoff points are. It's obvious what happens, what the protocol is if there's a problem or a concern or a conflict. And so structure is something that even in an online world can lead to more productivity. The second is transparency, which is again counterintuitive because I think a lot of managers think my job is to control information and parcel it out. The best teams actually have managers who enable transparency, and tactically that means oversharing information, creating really good documentation so people can find answers on their own, sharing status updates in a place people can access asynchronously, actually empowering your team to like have the information and get the answers they need. So again, they can just do stuff without having to constantly Slack or email or meet about it. And the last piece is fewer meetings, which again is something that managers have to let go of as kind of a tool for control or power. But meetings are just, the biggest destroyer of productivity out there. Of course, sometimes you need to meet, but there's a lot of meetings that don't need to be meetings. They could be documents instead or messages. And, we've seen cultures that make a shift from being meeting first to being document first tend to move a lot faster and enable their employees to actually spend their days doing work that matters versus the overhead stuff that is both unproductive and also really unsatisfying on an individual level.
That's an interesting point, I think, Adam. The meeting piece here. Most meetings, in my experience, are really organized around what are we doing. Yeah. Now, and where I'm going with this is, these are the kinds of face-to-face meetings. Ideally, from my perspective, would be around how are we doing, and then the what are we doing can be handled just in the way that you were describing it. I mean, this can be distributed, and it doesn't have to require a face-to-face because it actually can be relatively well documented. And as long as you've got some structure, to the point that you were just making, set up here, that how gets handled, or that what are we doing gets handled because it drops into the appropriate places here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It reminds me, we have a phrase like, could this meeting be a document? And when we were building Almanac, the tool, which is really about helping teams operationalize the modern work method just by using a new tool, so you don't actually have to like think about it. We went and looked at thousands of notifications from Google Docs to try and figure out like, what are people sharing? What are they commenting or assigning tasks on? And generally what we found is that people are doing the same 4 or 5 types of collaboration in documents. They're asking for feedback, they're requesting formal approval, they're sharing out information so that for kind of an FYI, or they're kind of requesting suggestions or changes over time. And so there's these common workflows that we all do. And the example you brought up of like, here's the plan, often what needs to be done in that case is someone writes a proposal, they share it for feedback, the team gives feedback, someone then kind of consolidates the changes, they share it out again as like, here's what we're doing. All that can be done asynchronously without a meeting. It can be done, when and how and where it works best for you and the rest of the team. We tend to find in our customers that meetings are best when there's not a clear yes or no answer, when you can't just say like, do you approve? Yes or no. Have you read this? Yes or no. Do you have feedback? Yes or no. But maybe more complex situations, often with urgent timelines. And even in those cases, starting the meeting with a document to say, here's the context, here are our options, here's some analysis, so that the meeting can be focused on, let's have a productive conversation where we now are on the same page about the facts and the alternatives. Those are the best meetings, because then you really can spend your time pushing the ball forward versus making sure everyone's on the same page, or again, sharing stuff that can be easily done before or after the meeting.
What this strikes me as really kind of an exercise in intentional design. And the metaphor, when I get an executive team together, oftentimes I'll have them make paper airplanes and fly the airplanes and try to hit a target that's about 2-3 meters away. nobody can hit the target. Nobody ever hits the target because it's a discrete target. It's not the wall, someplace on the wall. And so the conversation there is, as a leader, what do you think is the most important role that you play? Pilot, I've got my hands on control. I've got, no, it's not. The most important role is the one of the designer. Your airplane didn't hit the target because it wasn't designed to.
Yeah.
And what I'm struck by in what you're saying here is that when everything went south, in March 2020, the push to go back to what we were was a familiar design, and we had and I do think we still have a greenfield opportunity to design a completely different work structure, ethos, and process that is generative and holistic and healthy, in the long term. And that's what I hear you talking about with Almanac is how do we do that?
I think you're right. I mean, I think this is the shift. If you think about remote work as almost a form of technology, right? It's an enabling condition that allows us to do more and be more productive. To what David was saying, it's the same kind of disruptive force as the internet or mobile phones or the cloud. And I think with all of these cases, there's these disruptions have created new winners and losers. Some people recognize the power of the opportunity and embraced it early and got ahead, had an advantage, and other people are still stuck in the past. There's still conferences out there about helping companies move to the cloud, even though the cloud's been around for 20 years. Some companies are so on the cloud that they don't even know what on-prem means. And those companies tend to be market leaders. They're the fastest growing, most profitable companies out there. So I see distributed work, remote work as the same kind of opportunity where I don't expect everyone to embrace these ideas or even get them. Some people will resist them, to your point, out of fear or whatever it may be. But I think the teams that do try and figure out how do we adapt and evolve so that we can win in this new normal, those are the teams that are already getting ahead. And many of the companies were doing this even before COVID that are market leaders and not market leaders in like their productivity, just market leaders in terms of revenue and market share and growth. And so I think there's a direct correlation between how you work and how well your business does. Yep. And to your last point, I think sometimes people think about this as like overhead, like, oh, it's, they're so enmeshed in the chaos of the day-to-day that they can't pull up and think about it. I think that's why like people buy these business books at airports, because it's like, oh, I'm on vacation. Let me like think about the work of work a little bit. But what we've seen is that the teams that are best at this tend to design systems that are simple and cheap and flexible. They don't overthink it. They create something that works well for their team. And so a lot of these ideas aren't complicated. Like writing everything down is a very simple idea. And the best systems that end up working for teams are the ones that they follow through on. The same as any other kind of behavior change, like diet or exercise. Pursuing like a really difficult, complex formula tends to not sustain. What works are a couple simple ideas, like let's have fewer meetings, let's write everything down, let's share stuff to create transparency, so that everyone can do it for a very long time into the future.
Beautiful. We're going to have you back on. David and I have a number of different shows that we do. I'd love to have you on my Soul of Business podcast because this fits beautifully on this. And when David shows up again, we'll get a more in-depth conversation going with him as well. So, folks, I want you to check out almanac.io. We've had a great conversation here. Adam Nathan is founder and CEO. So thanks for sharing everything. I look forward to connecting again, and we'll be back.
Thanks so much.
Take care. And folks, I am going to sign off here. I'm not sure if David is going to be doing his regular Friday. I can't imagine he wouldn't be, but I don't have all of the information in front of me right now about that. But if you are familiar with the way that David works on Fridays, check it out. Go and I think there's probably a free training going on tomorrow morning. So thank you for listening to Office Hours with David Meltzer. I am the co-host of this particular Thursday show, Blaine Bartlett, and we'll see you next week. Take care.